Well, good afternoon, everyone. The H1B Guy here, and today, the H1B Guy Live with MobSquad President Arif Khimani, and we're going to cover Canadian immigration updates for 2023. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that I can continue to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. I help businesses and individuals solve complex work authorization issues in the recruitment process while bringing awareness to employment based immigration benefits. If I can help you, please reach out. I'd love to hear how, and you can book an appointment directly with me via the h1bguy.com. Today's live stream is proudly brought to you by Mob Squad. Are you a technology professional facing U.S. work visa related challenges? Don't leave your fate up to chance. Our partner Mob Squad has a solution. Join the squad. And also by our partners PERM-ads.com and Syndesis and Path to Canada. Well, Arif, nice to see you. Happy New Year to you. We are in the midst of 2023 now, and really excited to have you back on today to talk about all things Canadian employment-based immigration. How you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for having us back. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Really good to see you. And I wanted to just let everyone know that we'll be hearing more from Mob Squad over the next 12 months. Really excited to announce our continued partnership for the remainder of 2023. We have some really excited things that we do have planned. So I wanted to just mention a couple of those, and then Arif will jump right into the discussion here. But I'm going to be joined by Graham Nixon, the head of growth at Mob Squad, for another live stream that we will do on March the 29th. So more on that over the next month or so, as well as we're going to continue to do more Mob Squad testimonial interviews. I know a lot of you have reached out to me and really enjoyed the piece that we did with Sarab back in October of 2022 and talked about his experience in working with Mob Squad. I do want to mention, if you're interested in finding out more about Mob Squad, there are links in the video description below. There are also links to the previous live sessions that I've held with Mob Squad, as well as the testimonial with Sarah. So, Arif, I want to turn it over to you. Let's talk about target demographics for Mob Squad. Who are we looking to reach here today in this conversation? If you're watching this video for the first time and wondering, is Canada ideal for me? Can you help walk me through that, Arif?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the timing for this is great, given the H1B lottery season is well underway. I mean, we are basically, as you've announced on your videos, we're based in Canada, and we try to help engineers who may be on a STEM OPT visa that's expiring, that don't win the H1B lottery, or are on an H1B that needs renewing, that didn't get renewed. Basically, folks that are in the U.S. that are unable to remain in the U.S. due to visa-related issues, and that most often is typically those on a STEM OPT in their third year of the lottery that unfortunately don't get selected. In those cases, what we try and do is port that role to Canada so that they can continue supporting a US-based company, the one that they were supporting when they were in the US, just from Canada. And so the company gets to continue working with those individuals, and the individuals get to remain in North America, come to Canada on an expedited basis, get on a path to permanent residency, which is the Canadian equivalent of a green card, also on an expedited basis, and continue supporting a US-based company. And so the typical demographic for this is those in the US on those types of work visas. They tend to be in IT-related functions, because that's the stream that it allows us to actually obtain expedited visas. There are some changes to that, which we will discuss, which are all positive. And in terms of what that looks like, it can be individuals, it can be families, because if you do qualify for this visa, it means that your spouse can get an open work permit and your children can get study permits. So it can be any kind of family situation that works, as long as you're basically in that unfortunate visa situation in the U.S.
So target demographics then, OPT STEMs who are coming up on the end of their 12 months or 36 months. And I would even go as far as to say, Arf, H1B visa holders who are here in the US that are fed up with our lack of reform, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly fair. I mean, we do have a number of people who have been on the green card wait list for a number of years, even upwards of a decade, and because of some of the country caps being from certain places, makes it really, really difficult to get a green card. And so, if you're looking for that security, that's something we can help with as well, because we can help qualify people for um, expedited permanent residency processes
Mhm.
across Canada and across our offices.
And I think it's worth mentioning too, and just a reminder, and kind of as we lead into the process, um, it's not just about the global parking, right? Like moving your US job to Canada. You also have a division that has job orders you're looking to fill with clients in Canada as well, correct?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like if you're in a position where you're not able to continue working with the company that you're at now, we would encourage you to apply to what we call our talent roster. And so we're always looking for great engineers and folks that would be able to help us with that, because we do have clients who are asking us to fill positions, and so that people can support them from Canada.
Hmm.
That varies in terms of demand. Obviously, right now is a more challenging macroeconomic environment, so there's not as much demand for building new teams on our end. But we would still encourage you to apply, because there are still opportunities, and as the market
Hmm.
shifts, then that could grow again. So we're
Hmm.
obviously following what's going on there, and as we get more client demand, we can fill more roles. But there are steps on the process that we put people through, like a behavioral and technical screen, and so we would still encourage people to apply and get through all of that, so that if things pick up, we would have roles. And even right now, we do have some clients that are using us to help fill some roles, so that still works.
Yeah, this is where I remind everyone to make sure you use the link, right? That I have in the video description, and also on my website, the h1bguy.com, which takes them to a questionnaire to which they'll fill out. That's how I would prefer they kick off the process, but they can go to mobsquad.io as well on their own, and let you know they heard about you from the H1B guy. So I fill out an application, Mob Squad receives it. What happens after that?
Yeah, so if you're in kind of the situation we talked about first, where you have an expiring visa, or you are not able to remain in the U.S. for some reason related to your work visa, or as you had mentioned, if you've just been on the green card list for a very long time and want to find some stability in Canada, once you click Get Started and you send us just some very basic information about just your name and contact information and what your current visa status is, then our team could contact you to figure out what the path forward is here. And so we would first determine to make sure that these individuals are actually eligible for the PR, or for the work permit and PR streams that we're talking about. So, as I said, it's mostly IT functions with some added functions that we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Mhm.
So once we make sure that that works, we will then try and figure out a way to have that conversation with your current US company. And so that could either be through you introducing our partnerships team to that client, or you could have that initial discussion with them and then bring us in the loop, and we can send you some material that would help guide that discussion. But essentially, what we would want to do is have a discussion with the U.S. company that you're with now, to see, is there a way that we can have our solution in Canada work for them, and work for you. And then, once we get past that point, once we've had, contracts signed and employment agreements signed, then we can actually start moving forward with all of the immigration pieces.
Yeah, I think the biggest piece to this is how do they approach their employer if we're looking to relocate their job to Canada. That always seems to be one of the biggest questions I get is like, can you help me with that? And my answer is always yes. That's part of the what we call the Cadillac service here in the US, right? Like the full range of service. So I know it's something that, if necessary, you guys will get involved and help them have those conversations or create the introductions at the very least. I do want to mention too, like H1B layoffs. That's been the tech layoffs, the waves they're continuing here. Seeing a lot of pretty significant redeployment percentages here. this like tech shift that's happening, as I've been referring to it as. But still, if you're someone who's impacted by a layoff, 60 days is probably the absolute fastest you guys could make this work. And I know we talk about really that 8 weeks is kind of the ideal timeline for you guys, which is, a little bit longer, right? That's that 2 month, but really bordering on that 60-day period. Can you talk a little bit about your partnership with the Canadian government and how that really is a differentiator for Mob Squad?
Yeah, so I mean, I think your timelines are exactly right. I mean, we when this program works at its best, we can get work permits issued within a matter of 4 weeks, which is incredibly quick. It's a global online system, so it's not based on where you apply. So this could be from the U.S., from India, from anywhere, and it also, it's not any longer if you apply with a family versus as an individual. Like that, timelines are kind of committed across the board, which is amazing. We have seen over COVID that there has been some backlog with this process, so the timelines did increase, to up to 12 to 16 weeks in terms of how long things took to process. The good news is that we're starting to see things come back to normal. And so in the most recent weeks where we've been submitting work permits and applications, we're not quite down to that 4 week level, but within 6 to 8 weeks, we've typically been able to get things processed. So, that 60-day kind of 2 month timeline is on the lower end of what we can actually work with at this point. And we do, as we said, work with the government on both the global talent stream applications as well as the PR applications. And some of the ways that happens is you have to be obviously an eligible employer to use some of these programs, of which we obviously are. Within the provinces, a lot of the provincial streams for permanent residency are employer-based streams, and you have to meet certain criteria in order to do that, which we obviously work very hard to do across the board. And what this allows us to do is get expedited work permits for those that need them, basically across all of our offices, and B, have permanent residency solutions, which not only offer federal streams but also provincial specific streams, so that those that may not meet the qualifications for federal options can qualify through the provincial options that we would make available. So what we're really trying to do is make sure that this works for as many, if not all of those that are facing these work visa challenges in the US, so that they know that when they sign up, they have an expedited path to a work permit so they can quickly get to Canada and get working, but also that path to permanent residency, so they know that there's stability within a good period of time, that they'll be able to achieve their permanent residency. And for most folks, that's generally within a year. For some, it's up to 18 months, but relative to the US, it's very quick in terms of being able to do this.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with expedited processing and path to permanent residency. In my dealings with high skilled immigrants, whether it's here in the US or elsewhere, um, that's what they're looking for, or really kind of those two things. If they're going to take that leap, right, they're looking for a path. And expedited processing is a big part of that, because there's a lot of anxiety that happens while the application is in limbo. It just is the nature of how immigration works. It creates anxiety when you're moving your life. So in the news, one of the biggest things before we get to the GTS that I've been reading about is um, the university, the student immigration that's happening in Canada right now, and how that's impacting the US. All of the sudden now, one of the things that I'm seeing, and a lot of the data starting to really back it up, is that um, a lot of students now are looking at Canada as the destination for not only undergrad but advanced degrees. So we didn't really plan to talk about this, but I just want like one maybe quick minute on this.
Mhm.
If I come to Canada as a student and I get a degree, bachelor's, master's, what happens for me next there?
Yeah, so there are some programs similar to the US where you then have the ability to work in Canada after you get your degree. So similar to the OPT or STEM OPT, there's options for you to obviously remain in the country and continue working. I think the major difference is that there's a much clearer path to permanent residency if you are coming in on that student visa and then working in Canada, because most of the immigration streams in Canada, or the economic immigration streams, are done on a point-based system. So they look at things like your age, your language skills in either English, French, or both, your education background, as well as your work experience. And then there are bonus points you can get, which include work experience within Canada, having family in Canada, and a variety, or having a job offer, or actually having, working here. So it's a merit-based system, and they basically do draws generally every 2 weeks, pick those that are in the candidate pool with the highest number of points. And so if you are a student that studied in Canada and then you work in Canada for a year, you have a pretty distinct advantage because you get a lot of points for your education, for your work in Canada, and then obviously for your age and language skills would factor into that as well. And so as opposed to the green card, which may be challenging because it's country capped. You are on the H1B, and so you do need that to be renewed if you're not chosen as part of those.
Yeah, it's all employer driven, right? And I think that's
Exactly.
the difference. And 2.5 years now on this channel, I've been talking about points based immigration, merit based immigration is, to me, that first come first serve mentality, and it's been something that I've been a huge proponent of, and I don't see anywhere in the near future where we look to something like that here in the US, unfortunately. But that's why we're seeing this influx of students now going to Canada, right? It's a friendlier pathway. It just is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about December 19th.
Mhm.
The government of Canada updated their program requirements for the global talent stream for GTS, and I think they added 5 new occupations to the 12 that were already, or that they left in place. So I'm going to turn this over to you and let you talk about the updates to the GTS program, kind of the expanded categories, and what this means as we head into 2023.
Yeah, no, thank you. And then we were super excited to see that. And just for some background, basically, the global talent stream is the pathway that allows companies to bring in workers under certain job occupations on an expedited basis. So you get an expedited LMIA within 2 weeks, and then you get your work permit approved typically within 2 weeks after that. Currently, probably closer to 4 weeks, but still very, very expedited. And typically, over the last few years, most of the occupations within there have been specific to IT. So roles like software engineers, data scientists, cybersecurity, IT consultants. So really a broad range, but quite specific to IT, with a few exceptions. This list is updated, based on consultations with companies in Canada, as well as just surveys of where there are job shortages in Canada, because the whole purpose of this is to help Canada bridge the gap between where we have job shortage and where we can bring in foreign talent to help fill that. And so in December, they added a few occupation groups, which I think would be highly relevant to some of this audience. And these include civil engineers, electrical engineers and electronics engineers, mining engineers, aerospace engineers, and I believe the final one was electronics and electrical engineering technologists and technicians. So a whole new set of engineering categories that have not been part of this program are now within this program, which means that if you are within those occupations, you would now qualify for those expedited work permits. And what it means for us is that we can now help individuals in those roles. And a question that we would always get is, I'm an electrical engineer or I'm a civil engineer. Can this work for me? Like, I'm on a STEM OPT and I'm in the same situation you described. And our previous answer had to be no, because we can only really work with the functions that were within there, which were largely IT focused. But this does broaden, who we're able to help and who qualifies for this program, which is great. And the last thing I'll say on that is just that those are kind of the broader titles. within each of those titles is an umbrella of other titles that are within that type of work. So similar to before when we said software engineers, this did include like DevOps engineers and cloud engineers and cybersecurity. That would be similar for civil, electric, mining, and aerospace. And so if you're not sure if you qualify, the best thing to do is to reach out to us, and we can see based on your resume and your job description if that does actually match with what we could do. But if those roles ring a bell for what you're doing, then there is a high likelihood that you would qualify.
When I covered this back really right before Christmas here in the US, I thought that the most interesting to me was the mining engineering and the aerospace component.
Mhm.
And here I recently was down in Cape Canaveral in early December and kind of mid East Coast Florida, and uh, SpaceX and Blue Origin are revitalizing that area because of the amount of money that's being spent by Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Right, the space
Yeah.
race is on, and I thought the aerospace piece, which covers a lot of different areas, but I thought that was the one that stood out to me most. It was like, wow, that's always been one where it felt kind of restrictive, but it makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense now when you kind of peel it back and look at it from a holistic perspective of why. Um, you mentioned a lot of the 12 that they carried over were heavy technology. There's some mathematics, that math component, as you mentioned, data scientists, but some math categories as well. So you're
Yeah.
still seeing that emphasis being placed on STEM. Um, this to me tells me Canada's still all in on GTS. Gonna look revamping the program, adding some new categories, expanding it, if you will. It tells me that they're all in on it as a pathway to permanent residency, and really kind of filling a talent gap that's been ongoing in Canada as well. What other trends or predictions do you have as we head into 2023 of things that we may see over the next 11 months or so?
Yeah, no. So first, I think you're exactly right. I mean, this program started as a pilot and was made into a permanent program based on the initial success that it had. And as you said, like given that they're updating the occupation list and they kept every occupation that was previously on there and added more, it's a sign that this is working, and that it's delivering what government wants out of it, and hence we're seeing the growth of the program. There's a few things I think that we will see, and these are not, predictions. This is all very public policy in terms of Canada. 2022, the results have come out, and it was a record year for immigration in Canada. So even despite challenges with COVID and other things, there were still a record number of immigrants to Canada in 22. And if you look at what the government has announced as a plan for the next 3 years, so they released what they call a levels plan, which is announces their next 3 years of targets for immigration. And each year is projected to be a record year on top of what was already a record year this year, with over 500,000 people invited to be permanent residents in that third year. So they continue to project higher and higher immigration targets, which really benefits this group. Um, Otherwise, there's been talk that there will be programs to more easily help those in Canada that are temporary residents become permanent residents. So those that are here on work permits and potentially study permits actually create additional pathways or ways for them to become permanent residents. So that is beneficial for those that may struggle right now with the point-based system, or not have enough points. There may be additional pathways announced. Another one that was interesting is that they now have the ability to do occupation-based draws federally, and so they may decide in certain regions that they want to prioritize certain occupations. So this could be things like medical professionals. It could be again IT professionals that the government chooses to prioritize in certain draws, which just allows more flexibility for meeting the demand of where the country needs folks, which I think again could be to this group's benefit. Um, And then as we're seeing in a few provinces, like BC has a tech specific PR stream, and Alberta last year announced an accelerated tech program. There continues to be really, really, really high demand for technology workers, and so provinces are responding to this by creating provincial nomination PR programs that specifically benefit technology workers, which I know a lot of this group is as well. And so generally, all of the updates are positive for the folks that would be, potentially listening to this. So more immigration, more tech focused, and not yet announced, but likely to, or not yet announced in specific, but likely to come into place this year is additional pathways for temporary residents to become permanent residents. So, I think all is looking well on the immigration front here. The paths, as you mentioned, are working, and I think the thought is how do we do more and how do we expand on it generally, which is a positive sentiment.
Yeah, it's clearly evident, right, from my perspective as I start to look at um, the migration shifts that are happening and the tech migration shifts that are happening. I did want to mention we may have like a minute for questions. So anyone who is currently watching this, if you have a question, drop in the chat. I'll try to get to it. But we do have a hard stop at the top of the hour. One of the things, Arif, that I always am asked after we do one of these streams and we talk about relocating to Canada are the med pros. You hit on it just a little bit and looking at some of the updates and the policies and kind of the temporary statuses. You guys don't really do MD and RN type work yet. Is that something that is in the horizon for you guys, or are we just gonna stay focused in the tech space?
Yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, that will be something that we focus on because most of our clients are U.S. based companies. We're really focused on those types of roles that can be done with that capacity, whereas most medical folks work directly at institutions in Canada, which I think is probably the best path for them. So we're going to remain focused largely on the engineering space and mostly in technology, but the opportunities for those that are in med, I think, will grow independent of whether we're involved or not.
Yeah, and that's always a question that I get, and I appreciate you addressing that. It's really important. I did want to highlight really quickly. I mentioned the interview with Sarab that we posted back in October, but on your website on mobsquad.io there is a case studies tab. So it's just / case hyphen studies for those of you that want to check that out, and I'll copy that right now and post it in the chat. But I wanted to mention that, and we're working on scheduling a few more of those. Hopefully, plan to do at least 1 to 2 more of those by the end of the year. So be on the lookout for that. So there's the case studies if you're interested in reading about individuals that have gone through and worked with Mob Squad directly. So here's where I say, the what next. And the what next is you've heard who the target demographic is. We know that F1 OPT, H1B, and other high tech professionals from around the world who are seeking, a rewarding opportunity in Canada. As I mentioned, links in the video description below to go in and fill out that initial interest form, and someone from Mob Squad will be back in touch with you. If you want to hit their website directly, it's mobsquad.io, and just let them know that you heard about them from the H1B guy. I imagine probably in the next month or so, you're going to see a pretty good influx as the lottery comes up. USCIS is still not publicly stated when they're going to hold the lottery. I still expect it to be March 1st through about the 24th or 25th. So keep tuned for that. Sorry, Arif, we got one question. If we can just take this really quickly, have you answer this, and then I'll close this out. In summary, is Canada still a valid pathway in today's economy? Arif, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just building on the last thing you said first. Even though we don't know exactly when the lottery will be, if this is your last attempt, especially, we do encourage you to reach out to us as soon as possible. And the reason for that is just that it's really helpful if we can have that discussion with you, make sure you're eligible, and then ideally even have that conversation with your company so that if we do end up in a place where you're not chosen, then we're not scrambling to find a solution. If you are selected, perfect. That solves the problem. But if not, we want to try and get as ahead of it as we can, just so that we're in a good place where all we have to do is press go on the permits. If we're in a place where you're not selected. And then to this question, I think Canada is still a extremely valid pathway in today's economy. I think all of the work permit and PR streams that we discussed, so that includes the global talent stream, express entry PR, and all of the provincial nomination systems, especially the tech ones, are all still quote unquote open for business. There is still a shortage of technology workers in Canada. So there are still companies looking. It is a more challenging macroeconomic environment right now. So, it's not the same as what it was even 6 months ago. I would still say, I'd encourage you to continue to look, and especially with us, like if you send us your information, we can give you an indication of, what that would look like in your particular case.
Yeah, and my answer to that question is yes. We've called it 1A and 1B. It's no longer 1 and 2. I'm just being honest. The openness of the immigration process in Canada, to me, is just more inherently friendly right now than it is here in the U.S. So, one last personal question, then I'm going to close this out.
Yeah, of course.
Favorite city in Canada?
I feel like that's a hard one for me to answer. I'm from Vancouver, and I've lived in Vancouver, Calgary, and Toronto, which is where 3 of our 4 offices are. The other one's in Halifax. I think they all have, amazing things kind of going for them. But because I'm from Vancouver and my family is here, that's that's where I lean. But I will say that, it really depends on your situation. Like, as an example, if you're moving with a family, Calgary is pretty perfect because you can afford a home. The salaries are actually quite good there relative to cost of living. And so there's great options across the country depending on your specific situation and what you're looking for.
That's awesome. Yeah, you gotta go with your roots, right?
Exactly.
I've shared this with you and with Jamie as well, but I definitely need to get to Banff at some point in my lifetime. So I'm gonna dream big and put that on the bucket list.
Let us know if you come out. We're right next door, so we'll make sure you have a good time.
Looking forward to that. So, with that being said, Arif, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and then I'll let everyone know where they can find you and a little bit more about MobSquad. But today's live stream was brought to you by MobSquad. If you are a technology professional that's facing U.S. work visa related challenges, don't leave your fate up to chance. Our partner MobSquad has a solution. They work with technology professionals that are facing U.S. work visa related uncertainty, remain working with their current U.S. company nearshore from Canada, as well as technology professionals from around the world who are seeking an opportunity to find a rewarding career in North America. Through their partnership with the Canadian government, they can obtain a Canadian work permit for you and your spouse in as little as 8 weeks. So whether you're looking to stay working with your current U.S. company or you want to find a new opportunity in Canada, please find out how the team at MobSquad can help you via the link in the video description below. Join the squad. And also by our partners, PERM-Ads.com, the industry leader in providing a seamless experience for employers and immigration attorneys navigating the complex PERM recruitment ad phase of the labor certification process, and by Syndesis and Path to Canada. Arif, they can find you on LinkedIn. I put your profile in the video description below. Of course, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to shoot those to me directly. And I can channel those over to the team at MobSquad. But before I sign us off, just wanted to ask you again, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we post new content here to this channel or go live like we did here today on January 27th, 2023 at a little after 1:30 p.m. Eastern. For those of you that have made it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to join us live or watching this video at a later date. Really appreciate your support. I'm Robert. I'm the H1B guy, your global source for all things H1B. Thanks again, Arif. Really appreciate you coming on.